Latter-day Trumpet. This video is part of our second series of presentations about the Book of Mormon. Because the prophet Joseph Smith taught the early church leaders that the Lehi colony landed in South America, we have created this series of videos. Our theories and research is based on the truths from the Book of Mormon, but should not be considered as official church doctrine. In this video, we will review the important aspects of the area of the Promised Land called the Narrow Neck of Land. Most of the narrative of the Book of Mormon takes place in the Land Southward, south of this narrow neck of land. The Land Southward consisted of the landing site, Lehi's first inheritance, and then the land of Nephi with its capital, the city of Nephi. Then we have the land of Zarahemla, where the Nephites migrated to with King Mosiah I, and there they combined with the Mulekites. And finally, we have the land of Bountiful, which is just south of the narrow neck of land, and it is where the Savior first appeared to the Nephites. The narrow neck of land, later in the Book of Mormon, separated the Nephites from the Lamanites for many years, as the Nephites yielded up all of the land southward to the Lamanites in a peace treaty in 350 A.D. And the Lamanites did give unto us the land northward, yea, even to the narrow passage which led into the land southward. And we did give unto the Lamanites all the land southward. Mormon chapter 2, verse 29. 10 years later, the Lamanites again made plans to come against the Nephites to battle. Mormon had to gather his people together in the land desolation, in the narrow neck of land. And it came to pass that I did cause my people that they should gather themselves together at the land desolation, to a city which was in the borders by the narrow pass, which led into the land southward. Mormon chapter 3, verse 5. Mormon gathered all his people into the land northward, after they had been beaten several times in the narrow neck of land at Desolation and other cities. In 385 BC, Mormon had gathered all of the Nephites together at the land of Cumorah in the land northward. This was a land of many waters. Mormon had hoped that this land would give the Nephites an advantage in their last great struggle. Here he deposited and hid up all the records that had been entrusted to him, except these plates of Nephi that he gave to his son Moroni to finish. Because of the sheer number of the Lamanites, they overran the Nephite army and totally destroyed them. This land of Cumorah and Hill Cumorah area, where the final battle took place, is today called Mount Imbabura in northern Ecuador. And it came to pass that we did march forth to the land of Cumorah, and we did pitch our tents round about the hill Cumorah. And it was in a land of many waters, rivers, and fountains, and we had hope to gain advantage over the Lamanites. Mormon chapter 6, verse 4. One of the first times we hear about the narrow neck of land in the Book of Mormon is when Captain Moroni sends an army to head the army of the Lamanites in 67 BC, so that they could not escape into the land northward. And they met them in the land of desolation. And it came to pass that they did not head them until they had come to the borders of the land desolation. And there they did head them by the narrow pass, which led by the sea into the land northward, yea, by the sea on the west and on the east. Alma chapter 50, verse 34. Another time Captain Moroni sent an order to one of his army captains, Teancum, regarding the narrow neck of land. In Alma chapter 52, verse 9 it reads, "And he also sent orders unto him, that he should fortify the land Bountiful, and secure the narrow pass, which led into the land northward, lest the Lamanites should obtain that point, and should have power to harass them on every side." Alma 52, verse 9. So here we see how important it was for the Nephites to occupy and control the narrow neck of land, and especially the narrow pass, early on in their history of wars with the Lamanites. The importance of the narrow neck of land from a military point of view was that it made a strategic barrier of defense, and it was a prized position that could control troop movement. It divided the land southward from the land northward, and the narrow pass, which became a natural refuge or fort, which would give them an advantage in battle. It was a narrow passageway of only a day and a half's journey for a Nephite, 50 to 75 miles. It had the sea on both sides, the sea east and the sea west. This map of the narrow neck of land illustrates how strategic this area was in the Promised Land's Long Island. The narrow neck of land. One of the most important spatial aspects of the geography of the Book of Mormon is the narrow neck of land that is so often talked about. The narrow neck of land separated the land north from the land south, with the sea east only a day and a half's journey from the sea west. Alma 50, verse 34. This narrow neck of land is the defining attribute of the Book of Mormon land. The three basic parts of the Promised Land island was the land southward, the narrow neck of land, and the land northward. This is a schematic drawing then of the Promised Land that we know about from the Book of Mormon. And now it was only a distance of a day and a half's journey for a Nephite on the line Bountiful and the land Desolation from the east to the west sea. And thus the land of Nephi and the land of Zarahemla were nearly surrounded by water, there being a small neck of land between the land northward and the land southward. Alma chapter 22, verse 32. Everyone at first glance is prone to assume that the narrow neck of land spoken of would be Panama or the Isthmus of Darien. The other obvious choice would be the Isthmus of Tehuantepec in Honduras. But on a closer study, both isthmuses do not conform to the pattern spoken of in the Book of Mormon. There is no land northward or southward or east sea or west sea, looking at the map here, at either of these two isthmuses. And according to our theories, Panama was actually underwater at the time of Christ, before the whole face of the land changed. The landmass configuration of both of these isthmuses would have had to be turned a full 90 degrees to meet the Book of Mormon requirement. The Nephites were such great astronomers, as evidenced by ruins all over the Americas, it is hard to imagine that they could be out 90 degrees in their compass reading. Using the sun and the stars for their orientation, they would never be wrong regarding the sea east and the sea west as an example. Further discovery points out that there are no ruins even close to Panama, and the Isthmus of Tehuantepec in Honduras is really too wide to be a day and a half's journey for a Nephite. Again, focusing on South America and our little island chain of the Andean region, we finally see the proper narrow neck of land spoken of in the Book of Mormon. The Gulf of Guayaquil in Ecuador is a natural break in the coastal line of the Pacific. When we truly focus our attention on South America as being the promised land of Lehi, then we discover our narrow neck of land at the Gulf of Guayaquil in Ecuador. We resolve one of the great stumbling blocks of the Book of Mormon geography. In fact, looking at our proposed map of South America before the land changed, it can be seen that this narrow neck satisfies all the criteria talked about in the scriptures. There is a sea east and a sea west, and a land northward and a land southward, from Loja and the Zamora River in the sea to the sea west. The Gulf of Guayaquil is only 75 miles. Also, another feature of the narrow neck of land was that it had to have a narrow pass associated with it. This narrow pass also existed after the land changed and is seen today in modern times. North of Loja, south of Saraguro, there is a high and narrow pass called El Paso de Oro, the Golden Pass or Golden Way. It is an important pass, one which in early days had a way of controlling movement between Peru and Ecuador. In the days of the conquistadors, a battle called La Batalla del Oro was fought to conquer that pass. When we recognize the location of this pass in connection with the narrow neck of land, it is easy to see why these two terms have been used synonymously. This area all along the west coast of America is the only place that strictly conforms to all of the requirements set up in Alma 22 verse 32 regarding the narrow neck of land before the time of Christ and before the whole face of the land was changed. Today the continent of South America is not a small island of the sea, but it is a major landmass with a cosmopolitan population of millions of people that have immigrated here from many countries in search of freedom and a new way of life. South America is a continent with many countries, and it appears so completely different today from what it was before the time of Christ, before the whole face of the land changed. This is the promised land that the Lord prepared for his covenant people. And inasmuch as ye shall keep my commandments, ye shall prosper, and shall be led to a land which I have prepared for you, yea, a land which is choice above all other land. 1 Nephi chapter 2, verse 20. This land became the mother civilization of the Promised Land. Many people migrated to Polynesia, Central and North America, and usually they departed from this, the narrow neck of land, in search of peace and other new lands. But the Lord knows where he has led them, and loves all of his people, even until now in the latter days.